having established step one in our dilemma, abstinence being the only answer to being powerless, the unmanageability being the reason we cannot remain abstinent due to what's going on in the brain with this primitive fear system causing this unmanageability, which leaves a drug addict or alcoholic incapable of keeping drugs out of their body. And then this realization that there is something more powerful than that fear that cripples a person, and then believing that, that these things can help. I get to step three, and it's like, okay, here was our problem. We found a power that could help us, and it's like, all right, are you ready to do whatever it takes? Because like I said, it takes action and effort and these things to generate this power, generate this love. So now we get to step three, and it's like, okay, are you going to turn your will and your life over to this thing? Because everything I do, every action that I take is going to affect if I'm creating power, creating love, or I'm feeding fear. So now it's like, okay, I got to turn my will and my life over completely to this greater power, and I don't even know where I'm getting in the way. Because your average person, if you say, hey, would you just like to be love? It's like, most people would be like, yeah, I wish I was just love 100% of the time. It's not achievable, and we all would love for it to be, and that's the intention most of the time. However, I'm not living up to that, and I'm not achieving that. So I got to turn it over and start doing things that are different from what I've been doing, because I haven't been achieving. So turn it over to God, which is a simple blanket term to describe the power which created us all. Everybody's got a lot of different theories and ideas about that. However, we're here, something made us, let's call it God, boom. So we're going to turn it over to whatever this greater power is that exists. Basically, in order for me to turn it over, I'm going to have to get that ability to assert logic and reason again. And so the ability to assert logic and reason is only going to come by calming that fear. They describe addiction or being dry. Somebody who's dry is, they're restless, irritable, discontented, they're miserable. People look so miserable that it's like, man, you might need to do some drugs or alcohol. And so that's not a way to live. So I'm trying to find a state of peace and contentment. And that's the only way that I quiet this fear, and I'm going to be able to have decision making and logic and reason again and all that. The book talks about self and how self is the problem, because if God is the answer and God is love, then I am fear. Selfishness essentially is a response to fear. So in and of itself, selfishness is not a bad thing. Selfishness is basically talking about the part of our being that says, hey, I need to keep me alive. I need to get me to safety. It's very essential to have this self-sustaining, self-driving, self-preserving part of ourselves. However, the selfishness is a response to fear. Self is saying, oh, there's fear. We need to do what we need to do to become okay. And so the book says we're an extreme example of self-will run riot. Well, if I'm experiencing extreme amounts of fear and I've conditioned my brain to deal with these fears in selfish ways, you will very much think this is self-will run riot, because this person is consistently selfish. And drug addiction in and of itself is, I'm thinking about how I'm going to get more drugs and alcohol. What am I going to do when I'm under the influence? And then worrying about running out of drugs and alcohol, and then getting more, all these things. So it's very self-centered, it's very fear-driven, but this self-centeredness and the excessive selfishness is a response to this excessive amount of fear. So my ability to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Well, I have this consciousness, this ability to assert logic and reason, and I'm like, hey, I want to turn my will and my life over to God. I want to choose love. I want, to do the right thing. However, once again, it's not a matter of choice. It's not a matter of knowledge. The conscious mind is said to have, give or take, 5% of brain activity. So the majority of brain activity is subconscious, which means it's not accessible by my consciousness, which is also driven by the primitive part of the brain, in which the primitive part of the brain thinks, hey, we need drugs and alcohol, and it's telling me I'm in danger, and then I need drugs and alcohol. So by making this decision to stop, the decision to turn my will and my life over to God is about as powerful as my decision to stop using drugs and alcohol, because despite my best intentions, I'm dealing with battling my subconscious habits, conditioned responses. So it takes certain actions and efforts and things that I need to do to generate this power. So same thing here, is that just me making the decision or having the intention is not going to address all this below. So what step 3 really is? Step 3 is a commitment to do the rest of the work. Steps 3 and 4 come as a pair, because it says immediately after taking the 3rd step, we immediately move into the 4th step. We take no time at all. So if somebody's truly worked a 3rd step, anybody can say a 3rd step prayer or say they've turned their will and their life over, but if somebody's actually turned their will and their life over, they've immediately started working on a 4th step, and they've started digging into all that, so that they can see how they're living in self and how the fear is driving them, and then what they need to do to generate the power of love. This 3rd step is just saying, hey, I'm going to do what is necessary to help bring back manageability. However, it's not just simply a matter of choice. I'm going to have to learn how my actions have been generating fear, and how I've been selfish, and how, the selfishness and the fear correlate, and how all that correlates to the unmanageability. So yeah, at step 3, it's just, hey, I realize that I have a problem and I can't do anything about it. I am open to the fact that there is ways to address the sources of my problem. And then step 3 is like, okay, now I'm going to take the necessary action and commit to what I need to access this source of power that is going to address the unmanageability.